Live to a BBC clip from Gaza. So it's the first time I've seen this a little bit earlier today. I will add it now. We can check it out together. The stuff going on in Gaza right now, of course, is insane. As you may know, and if you don't, I don't know where you've been. Hamas attacked Israel unprovoked.
Is extremely complicated, and it's difficult to explain to people exactly what is happening. Let's cross live now to someone who I think can help with all the questions that people have been searching for online and indeed sending us here at the BBC. Our Middle East editor, Sebastian Usher, is in the newsroom, very ready, as always, to help with questions, Sebastian. And I suppose that the first question that we need to ask you is, why is this happening at this moment in time?
Yes, why?
Well, I mean, there are quite regularly eruptions in the conflict, specifically between Hamas, which controls Gaza, and Israel. The last one we saw was back in 2021. The last really big confrontation was in 2014, but there have been a number of wars that have taken place since Hamas took control of Gaza in 2007 and Israel imposed a blockade which has held ever since. So there's 10.
Now, as you may know, Iran has also backed Hamas. Recently, Joe Biden, on the anniversary of 9/11, gave Hamas $6 billion. And now he's saying they stand on the side of Israel. So I think he's trying to fight both sides of the fence, and that is not going to work out well for the Americans.
Tensions are always there. In the past, we have usually seen the conflict, although it's had terrible consequences and the numbers of people killed, particularly in Gaza from the airstrikes that Israel launches in response to rockets being fired by Hamas. But it's been within a certain kind of lines that both sides seem to accept that they don't cross in order to take it into, uncharted territory. What we've seen this time is that those lines have been crossed. Those lines were crossed essentially when Hamas fighters infiltrated into Israel and caused, the worst incident for Israel pretty much since its inception, with hundreds, at the moment we're saying at least 700 Israelis having been killed. So that is the real huge game changer here. That is why this is such a serious situation. But those pressures, those tensions, as I say, they don't just exist in Gaza as far as the Palestinians are concerned, but in the occupied West Bank, where we've also seen a major rise in tensions, in almost daily clashes between the Israeli military, which mounts regular raids into the main towns in the occupied West Bank, and they're met often with Palestinian fighters who fire back, who throw rocks, explosive devices. We've seen several hundred Palestinians.
Now, I think there's been well over 700 people killed. I think there's 1,000 plus. And then, not to mention the rapes, the murders. Now, I'm looking at it from the Israeli side. Of course, Palestine has been poking the bear for far too long, and Israel is God's nation, so they are God's people, the Jewish people, so I side with them. They've been poking the bear far too long, and now Israel, with their firepower, their jets, they could quite conceivably wipe out Palestine if they wanted to. I think Israel is giving quite a measured response, given the fact that they have been provoked so much. But let me know what you think as we're listening here. Let me go back.
Many of them fighters, but some of them civilians killed over the past year and a half in that. So this hasn't come out of nowhere, but the surprise is the way that Hamas executed its attack on Israel.
Sebastian, many people have been searching this particular question, and it is Palestine, is Gaza an actual country?
It's not officially formally a country as such. Gaza is part of the Palestinian territories, as I was just saying. There's Gaza, there's the occupied West Bank, and there's East Jerusalem and its surroundings, which is seen as part of the Palestinian territories. The Palestinian Authority, the PLO, which is essentially the original real driving force of Palestinian stateship, declared that it was a state many decades ago. And some countries have accepted Palestine as a state, but there are a number of others who haven't, the US being perhaps the main one. So what it has at the moment is at the UN it has observer status, non-member observer status, which is essentially close to being accepted as a state, but not a state. And we still talk about the peace process that has been going on for years, but has been stalled for a long time now. The main objective through much of that was to create a Palestinian state, the so-called two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Another question many people have been asking, Sebastian, is does Hamas represent Palestine?
No, it doesn't represent Palestine. I mean, it is one of the two main factions. As I say, it has controlled Gaza since 2007, wholly controlled Gaza since then. It won the last elections in the Palestinian territories in 2006. It then fought a battle with Fatah, which is the party that essentially runs the occupied West Bank, and it drove them out. So it's been in control since then. It's an Islamist organization. Its ideology originally comes from a Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. So, I mean, Palestinians themselves, many of them are not Muslims. There are Christians, there are other faiths there as well. So it certainly doesn't represent the entirety of the Palestinians by any means. It does represent, for a number of Palestinians, not just the Islamist ideology, which some support, but also the sense of resistance to Israel. It's seen as the most actively the most active in that resistance, as we're seeing once again here. The Palestinian Authority, the PLO, Fatah have moved towards, in the past 3 decades, to essentially accepting Israel's right to exist and no longer confronting it militarily. Hamas has never changed from its military stance towards Israel, that it sees Israel as its enemy and it will fight Israel, as we've seen regularly, this being the most extreme example of that we've seen so far.
Sebastian, another question that is one of the most searched on the internet is, who are the Palestinians? Can you explain that to us, given obviously there's a very long history, so within the time frame, obviously?
Yes. No, there.
Now, let me, President Benjamin Netanyahu would say the Palestinians are Arabs. He refers to them as Arabs. And they're a strong Muslim population. And here where I live, near Toronto, and then in Ottawa, our capital, in Montreal, which is also down the other way, further east from me, there is a strong Palestinian not uprising, but their celebration of what's been going on. And although the Hamas has gone into bomb shelters, killed women and children, and they've actually shown on their phones they're capturing women. They had a naked woman face down in the back of a truck who'd obviously been raped and killed, and they were celebrating with Allah Akbar. And so this is not any kind of incident to be taken lightly. Now, I think the EU backs Israel, so I don't think we're on the brink of a world war. But there's been rumors that Turkey and Iran are backing Palestine. Whether that's true or not, the next few days will tell for sure. But if that happens, then things will get really crazy.
There is a long history. I mean, the word Palestine dates back, at least 2,000 years. It was used in Roman times. It was adopted in the early days of Islam. It was Arabicized. There was a Palestine existing as, again, we can't really say as a state, but as a region for a very long time, and people identifying as Palestinians for a very long time. The mandate that existed under the British that came before Israel was established, had its independence in 1948, 1949, was known as Palestine. So, I mean, Palestine is very much an accepted way of referring to that region, but there are many problems with that. In terms of how large a part of that region is seen as Palestine, who it should belong to, these counter narratives that there are. I mean, many Israelis would go back further. They would go back to the biblical denomination of many of those areas, talking of Judea and Samaria and other words like that. So, I mean, though historically it is a fact, and there's no question about the sense of there being a Palestine and there being a Palestinian people, the actual way in which that's interpreted is still open to question, and depending on what perspective people are looking at from. So it remains, a very live debate, but certainly for the Palestinians who identify as Palestinians, and that's not just in the Palestinian territories, but beyond the huge diaspora, both in the refugee camps that spread across parts of the Middle East, but well beyond that, they obviously, naturally, 100% see themselves as Palestinians, even if there is no formal Palestinian state as such at the moment.
And Sebastian, finally, one of the biggest or the most asked questions online is, who backs Hamas?
Well, I mean, financially, one of its main supporters has been Qatar, but Qatar would make a distinction between supporting the people of Gaza, who obviously have faced immense problems economically. It's one of the poorest areas in the world. They would say that the money that they give through Hamas, because Hamas controls Gaza, is for the people, that it doesn't support necessarily the political agenda of Hamas. It doesn't support what Hamas is doing now necessarily. It does believe in the Palestinian bid for its own state, for its own identity. It supports that 100%. It does believe that the Palestinians face huge problems, much of them, they believe, resulting from Israel and its occupation, but it would not say that it directly supports Hamas as an entity. You have other countries, such as Iran, which do openly support Hamas and what it's trying to achieve. And we've seen since this assault happened that Iran has very openly come out and shown its backing and said that it believes that Israel is essentially reaping the wind that it's sown. So, and also in military terms, in the past, maybe not so much now, but a lot of the hardware, a lot of the missiles that that Hamas was somehow able to get, despite the blockade around Gaza, were Iranian-made. In more recent years, they've been able to manufacture many of those themselves within Gaza. Syria, again, the so-called axis of resistance, and then other non-state players, particularly Hezbollah, for example, in Lebanon, which did make a gesture by firing some mortars towards Israel on the second day of this assault, but hasn't so far committed itself beyond that. Lebanon, as a country, supports again the right of the Palestinians to resist, to defend themselves, but the government, such as
whoa, wait a second. Supports the Palestinian right to defend itself. They attacked first. Oh, brother. This guy's...
There are backers, but it's not hugely widespread. I would say the most important would be Iran and Qatar, financially at least.
Yeah, Iran. Told you.
Sebastian, thank you very much indeed. Sebastian Asher there, giving a full...
Now, he's Jewish, so the last name like Asher. Now, as I said, Biden just gave Iran $6 billion on the anniversary of 9/11, and Iran backs Hamas in Palestine. So draw your own conclusions, folks. I'm not a political analyst, but I can kind of weigh in on this. I don't know what you think. Let me know.
Explanation to all of those questions that you have been searching for online.
So that's my take. That's their take on the entire thing. I'm glad you enjoyed I'm glad you joined me today for a little live stream. I'm trying some new software, and we'll see how that works out. Normally do reactions that are music, but this I'm reacting as a Canadian. Now our Canadian embassy has been closed. They are not even providing aid to our Canadian citizens there, which is a travesty, a travesty, a travesty. We have Canadian citizens living in Israel, and we have closed down the Canadian embassy. So if you have any comments about this, I'd appreciate it. Any insight that you want to add, I'd appreciate that too. Please join me again. We'll see if we can, if you enjoyed this type of format, type of information, maybe that we can go forward with it. We'll see what happens. Okay? Have a good one.